Okay, in 6.2, the second part, we're only going to be talking about a kite today. And a kite is not a parallelogram. So I want you to write down that a kite is not a parallelogram because it does not have two sets of parallel sides. It also does not have two sets of opposite congruent sides. So it's definitely not a parallelogram like we've been talking about for most of the chapter. However, a kite is a quadrilateral, meaning it has four sides, and the consecutive sides, excuse me, the opposite sides, I'm sorry, the consecutive sides are congruent. So what that means is these two are touching and they're congruent, and then those two sides are touching and they're congruent. So I'll say two consecutive sides are congruent. And there's two special things about the kite. The first thing is that the diagonals are going to be perpendicular. So what I want you to draw right here, I want you to draw those diagonals, and I always want you to put a right angle so that you do not forget that. The second thing that's important is that there's only one set of congruent opposite angles. And the way to tell which ones are going to be opposite are the ones that are in between the two different sides. So this side and this side are different, so angle B is going to be congruent, and angle D is touching two different sides, so angle B and angle D are going to be congruent. Okay? So those are the special things you need to know about a kite. The first type of question that they're going to ask you in your homework talks about the angle measures. So again, they tell you it's a kite. Whenever you see kite, I want you to do the tick marks. So I know this side's going to be congruent to this side, and I know this side's going to be congruent to this side. And I want you to put that the diagonals are perpendicular, and I want you to put that angle B is congruent to angle D. So this kite looks a lot like that kite. All right, now that we know all that stuff, we're going to fill in the other information they tell us. They tell us that DAB, so this whole angle is 54 degrees. And they tell us that CDF, so this angle right here is 52 degrees. All right, so knowing that, I want you guys to find as much information as possible. And there's two ways you can do it. You can look at it in terms of isosceles triangles, or you can look at it in terms of right triangles, because we have both in this picture. I'm going to show you guys about the isosceles triangles first, and then I'll talk about the right triangles. So if you look at the top part of the kite, we have two congruent sides. This yellow is an isosceles triangle. When we have an isosceles triangle, that means that the opposite base angles are going to be congruent to each other. So if this angle is 52 degrees, that means that this angle has to be 52 degrees. All right. Now, if I know that this part's 52 and this part's 52, how could we, 52. How can we figure out what this third angle is in the triangle? How can we figure out what angle C is? Well, if we add them up, 52 plus 52, we get 104. And we know that there's 180 degrees in every triangle, so we subtract 180 degrees, and we can figure out that angle C, this whole angle, is 76 degrees. All right, so we just used isosceles triangle. At the bottom part of the kite, there's another isosceles triangle, so we're going to do this thing again, except for the bottom one, bottom part of the kite. So this one and this bottom part of the isosceles triangle, we know that these two angles have to be congruent to each other, right? But they tell us that this top angle is 54 degrees. So we're going to use the same, kind of do the same thing we did over here. We know that there's 180 degrees in every triangle, so we subtract 54 from it and we get 126. And then these angles have to be equal to each other. So we take 126, we divide it by 2, and that tells us that this angle has to be, what, 63? And this angle has to be 63. Did I do my math right? I think so. All right, so this angle is 63, and this angle is 63. All right, so basically you solve this whole kite just using isosceles triangles. If you want to look at isosceles triangles, go ahead and look at isosceles triangles. So let's see if we can answer anything on the page. It says try to find angle BCD. BCD, we already answered that. That was 76 degrees. What about ABC? ABC is this entire angle. So you have to take 63 and add 52 to it, and we get 115. And the last one says FDA. And FDA we already solved, and we got 63 degrees. All right, so that's one way to do it is by looking at isosceles triangles. The next example, I'm going to use right triangles and show you how you can use right triangles instead of isosceles triangles. So it tells us it's a kite. They gave us the congruent side lengths. What I want you guys to fill in next is we know that they're perpendicular, so put those right angles in there. And then we also know that angle R has to be congruent to angle P. Right? Okay, so this time we're only going to be using right triangles just in case you really like right triangles and you don't like anything else. Or isosceles triangles. Okay, so angle PQR. This whole angle, they're telling us, is 78 degrees. And they tell us TRS. So that's just this angle is 59 degrees. All right, so given that just those two numbers, let's see how much we can figure out about this triangle. Kite, excuse me. Okay, so for starters, let's look at this right triangle right here. There's a right triangle because we know that the diagonals are perpendicular. So if this one's 90 and we have a 59 degrees, you're going to add them up. You subtract it from 180. Oops. So 90 minus 59 is going to be, what is it, 31? So we know this angle is 31 degrees. Now, I'm sorry, if you don't like isosceles triangles, you're going to have to suck it up. This big thing is an isosceles triangle. So if this angle is 59 degrees, we know that this angle is also going to be 59 degrees. And this is a right triangle. So you guys could do that math all over again. Or you could say that these are two congruent triangles, so this one's going to have to be 31 degrees as well. All right. So we have 31, 31, 59, 59. How do we figure out what this other one is? Well, look what happened to angle S. Angle S was bisected. Up here in this other example, we didn't do this one, but angle D and angle B, these ones were the congruent ones, and notice they were not being bisected. So one thing I want you to remember is that the congruent angles are not bisected. The other angles are. So this one's going to be bisected, and the 78 degrees is also going to be bisected. So 78 divided by 2 gets us 39. Am I doing that right? 39, 39? Yeah. All right. So that means this angle is going to be 39 and this angle is going to be 39. And now we're going to look at the right triangles on the top. Remember, these are congruent triangles. So we can figure out one, we can know what the other angle is. So one angle is 90 degrees, one angle is 39. You add them up, subtract them from 180. So 39 plus 90 equals something. What, 129? And then you subtract it from 180. 180 minus 129. And you get 51 degrees. So that means that this angle has to be 51 degrees. And that means, since we have isosceles triangle, that this other one has to be 51 degrees. To check your work, remember I said that the congruent angles are not being bisected. This one part of the congruent angle is 51, this other one is 59. That's correct. They are not supposed to be bisected. All right, let's see if we can answer any of the questions that they gave us. So for number 4, they wanted QRT. QRT, we just solved that one. That one's 51 degrees. QPS. QPS is this whole angle right here. So you have to take the 51 plus the 59, and that gets you, what, 109? 110. 110 degrees. And then the last one, PSR. PSR is this whole angle right here, and we know that one part's 31 and one part's 31, so you add them up and you get 62 degrees. How do you use the properties to find the measures of the kites? So for reflection number 1, what are the two different types of triangles you can look at to try to find the measures of angles? Go ahead and answer that right now. Okay, the next one, thing that we're doing today. Yes, this is the last one. The next thing we're going to talk about are the side lengths of kites. So Lucy is framing a kite with some wood. She uses the two pieces of wood. One measures 18, one measures 30, and the other ones measure 27. To complete the kite, she needs a piece of wood to place along KL. So she needs to know how long is KL. And that way she can make her kite. All right, so remember, it's a kite. So they already told us that these pieces are congruent and that these pieces are congruent. And what happens to the diagonals? They make right angles. So we have 4 right triangles in this problem. And we want to figure out how long this side is. Now we know that this whole side is 30. So what do you think this part is going to be? Well, it's going to be half of it. It's going to be 15. So we can say that this part is 15, this part is 18, and we want to know how long this part is. We're going to call this part x. We're going to use Pythagorean's theorem to solve for that first part, x. So this is to solve for x. Now, the hypotenuse is the longest side. It's the one across from the right angle. Remember, the right angles are right here and right here. There's 4 right angles. Okay. So we know that 18 is the hypotenuse, and we know one side is 15 squared, and we want to figure out what that other side is. So when we figure out that side, we'll get x. So we have to do our math. Do your math right now and tell me what b equals, which will really be x. All right. You're going to do the same thing for the bottom part. So I want you guys to do the same part. We're going to call this part y. You know that this side of the hypotenuse, I'm sorry, this part of the right triangle is 15 and this part is 27. So how do you think you're going to plug it in into a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Which one's the hypotenuse? The 27. And then so that it doesn't really matter where the 15 goes. So solve for b, and this will tell you what y really is. So go ahead and take a second and do that. Okay, for x, I got about 9.9. Did I do that right? Yeah. And then for y, this is x. And for y, let's see. Y, I got about 22.4. All right, so we want to find out the whole piece. So you take this x and you add the y, and that'll tell you how long we need the whole wood piece to be. So add 9.9. And I got about 32.3 centimeters. All right, so those are the two things we're doing with the kites, talking about the angle measures and talking about the side lengths.